Is there room for diversity in Silicon Valley? A new documentary shines a light on Silicon Valley, the place where Microsoft founder Bill Gates and former Apple CEO and founder Steve Jobs got their start, but not for its historic record of producing the next great breakthroughs in technology but, instead, for its apparent lack of diversity. In the CNN documentary series, Black in America, 8 Black entrepreneurs in the New Me Accelerator program share their struggles to launch startup businesses in a place where minority representation is virtually non-existent. In an interview that ignited a firestorm on Twitter this week, Mike Arrington, an industry leader and founder of, revealed an even harsher reality. This is a white and Asian world up here. It just is. He said. Arrington, who also commented that he doesn't TMT know of a single black entrepreneur in the Valley, was harshly criticized for his apparent acceptance of the racial disparity. The Arrington interview shows the ignorance of key people in Silicon Valley. They really don't see beyond their small circle or prism. Vive Ecuador, former entrepreneur and columnist of several leading media outlets. While blacks may work just as hard to get their businesses off the ground, there appears to be a different set of standards they face, from outward appearances to the ideas they pitch to investors. The entrepreneurs, in a follow-up session with Interactive One founder Navarro Wright, receive what can only be described as a harsh reality check from one of their own. If an investor TMS only seeing one African American a year to give a pitch, and you don't TMT do well, said Wright after telling the group to be harder on themselves in critiquing their past pitches. TMV not only affected you, TMV affected other people. TMS that important. The documentary, The New Promised Land, Silicon Valley, the fourth episode in the CNN Black in America series, premieres on November 13 at 8 p.m. ET. The way I see it, the problem is that almost all venture capitalists in Silicon Valley are white or Asian males. Even if they don't overtly mean to be racist, they will subconsciously give funding to entrepreneurs that they feel more comfortable with, which means white and Asian males, because those are the types of entrepreneurs they see all the time in the Valley and those are the types of people that they spend most of their time with. If you have something that is generating money, you can get funding. The way I see it, there is no diversity because the government can't set regulations for how many minorities the capitalistic markets are required to have each year. The minorities are forced to perform before granted access. Your entry is actually based on ability and performance, zero handouts here. This doesn't have anything to do with racism. In the 08-09 NBA season 82% of the players were black and they are making big bucks. The black basketball players perform better than the players of other ethnicities. Whites or Asians for the most part are smarter, blacks are for the most part more athletic. This is pure raw evidence of that. Observations based on such obvious data like this should never be thought of as racist. Your comment proves my point. Because the mostly white Silicon Valley investors think along those lines where they believe that whites and Asians are smarter, even if they don't overtly say or believe it, it's more of a subconscious thing. They tend to invest in white and Asian founders more. Regarding your point that they only invest in proven companies, that's false. Entrepreneurs get funded all the time in Silicon Valley without showing traction. Ever heard of TechCrunch Disrupt? It's an event where programmers come and show off a new product that they've coded during that week, and the team that gets voted up the most wins, and investors give them seed money to get their project started. Many businesses cannot get started without that initial capital, so that's why entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley go around pitching their idea to VCs and hope that one of them likes it enough to fund them. This happens all the time for white and Asian entrepreneurs, but not black or Hispanic entrepreneurs for the reasons I've listed above. It's too much of a closed environment. There are plenty of talented black and Hispanic entrepreneurs out there, they're just ignored most of the time. For instance, Tony Ghoda, who is the founder and CEO of Bitcasa, was a TechCrunch Disrupt finalist. Click the link below to see his presentation. His company promises unlimited data storage for only $10 a month, which is an amazing concept, and he's going up against companies like Dropbox and... This sentence is 100% wrong. Surely blacks excel in some sports. Baseball and hockey are predominantly white sports, but this might be a function of opportunity versus ability. It's possible that athletic dominance is simply a function of participation percentages. There's no evidence of any genetic advantages that create athletic ability. Body form surely has some impact, and some of that is simply hereditary. Look at basketball. Outside of the United States, the powerhouse in basketball is Eastern Europe, not Africa. Lithuania, Germany, Russia, Croatia, and Serbia. Similar trends in soccer powerhouses from non-black nations. It's not biological. In my opinion, it's conditioning, access, and participation. However, you simply can't state like it's a fact that white people and Asian people are smarter than black people. People are people. You seem to imply that they are genetically inferior. Skin pigment does not indicate a physiological difference. Poverty and education probably have more to do with the disparity than capability or capacity. Educational levels probably generate a false sense of smarter. Humans are humans. Race being a difference of only skin pigmentation is a false belief. Different genetic traits and abilities developed differently in people who lived in different parts of the world. Skin pigmentation is just the only difference that is immediately obvious. You can guilt a college into having mandatory population levels of certain minorities, but when it comes to money it just isn't going to happen. If Jim Brown can play in the NFL during a real time of racism due to his excellent ability, then any black entrepreneur can get funded in Silicon Valley in a time when the President of the United States is black if he is really bringing the heat. Again, I'm not racist at all, but you are pulling your arguments from your opinion more so than what is actually happening in reality. And your evidence is where? Not attacking here, but is your statement about black basketball player percents your raw evidence? I'm not going to get into it much deeper than I already have. Let's just say, people gravitate towards activities they are good at, and they excel. Very wise, by the way. How's your site coming along? That's all he needs apparently. Case closed. 1. Being racist just for the sake of being racist is ignorant and stupid. 2. Thinking that everybody is equal just for the sake of everybody being is equally stupid. The differences between 1 and 2 are, it is socially acceptable and encouraged by people to share your opinion. On another note, people will become upset and consider it taboo to share your thought. I am a realist and I am not racist. I love all people because they are different. Black people bring things to the table white people do not, and vice versa. You think white people are smarter than black people because blacks have inferior genetics. You're the most racist person I've had the displeasure of talking to in the last month. And your justification is basketball? Lol. Or maybe I think white people are inferior because they are not as athletic. You are just seeing what you want to see. Or maybe you're a racist bigot who's trying to justify and failing spectacularly, put each other into positions? Seriously? Entire societies have tried to do this. In fact, that's pretty much what World War II was fought over. I am not interested in putting anyone into positions. I assume what you are talking about is helping people discover and foster their potential. I'm sure not going to judge their intellectual capacity by the color of their skin. There are millions of black people smarter than me. I am checking out of this thread before this contaminates my enjoyment of this newly found forum. My grandma married a black man and she was with him for 15 years. I grew up thinking his whole entire family were actually my blood relatives until I was 7 years old. I'm not racist at all, but I'm not afraid of the truth either. If anything is even slightly racially related and you do not share communist-like, hippie views, people start acting like idiots and the words racist, bigot etc. start flying. This is ridiculous. Oh sorry, I didn't know your grandma married a black man. You're racist, condescending, bigoted. False truth is perfectly acceptable now. Let's be real and stop the week of my cake and eat it to justifications. Here is a story which would be evidence against the premise put forth by the op. I'm curious, without being racist at all, just for the sake of understanding why you are becoming so upset. What ethnicity are you and what countries do your ancestors come from? Like I said, has nothing to do with race. If you bring a good product or service, people will use it. Money talks. Interesting to see how that works out. Somehow I doubt that. I don't think there's any understanding left for us to talk about it. Perhaps I'll go do something athletic. I would hate to forget my place now. Dude, I'm not racist. You are projecting your own thoughts onto me. You think that just because you would have certain thoughts if you said the things I just did, I have the same. It just isn't true. To tell you why I asked you that question, you are giving me the impression you are something other than white, which would explain why you are showing such hostility to me right now. I'm just trying to understand why you would blow up like that. Okay, I've reread this thread. It just doesn't make sense, and I actually want to get a clear picture from this. Am I correct in saying that you believe that ethnicities differ in what they can succeed in? Full stop. Edit. I now see that whilst writing this you mentioned it has nothing to do with ethnicity. I'm lost. Anyway, I believe that culture is what lets people excel in certain fields. That's where those ideas of Asians are better at math, etc. comments originally came from, I think. But yes, your culture, i.e. your immediate environment in the present or even past for that matter, shape your focus on certain things. If you hear guys like Eminem or 50 Cent, they say that if you grow up in a ghetto your thinking automatically goes to, I can either 1 become a rapper or 2 become a drug dealer. This has nothing to do with ethnicity. Note how I mentioned Eminem and 50 Cent. It has to do with culture, traditions, family pressures, etc. but certainly not ethnicity. It doesn't have anything to do with abilities either. A shift in focus is what's needed. Edit. By the way, it's extremely easy to misinterpret words, ideas, emotions, and intentions on the internet. People read words differently. Use your smarter genetics and figure it out. I don't know enough about you to where I could accurately assume what you are, so I have to ask. In case anyone wants to inject some facts into the conversation. According to your words, you have all the data you need. I know I'm going to get blown up for this, but here it goes. Who created the Western societies and Western culture in the first place? Who created the language we are speaking right now? It was the conscience of a white man who did. To see what the conscience of a black man is able to create, look to Africa. If left to their own, how industrialized and high-tech would Africa be? If left to their own, how industrialized and high-tech would Europe be? Don't call me racist for pointing out something that is true. I personally don't think making it in Silicon Valley has anything to do with race, and the whole article is overblown regarding the issue. If someone has a good business concept and can present that concept well, investors will invest into it no matter what race they are. As in Felix Dennis's How to Get Rich, money is the most neutral substance in the world. It does not care what color you are, where you came from, what gender you are, how old you currently are, etc. I think it's a very foolish statement to say blacks are more athletic or whites or Asians are smarter. There's not as many black entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley because there's not as many of them that are interested in becoming a tech entrepreneur. Does that make whites or Asians smarter? Of course not. If a black man or black woman wanted to be an entrepreneur and has a good concept, I'm sure investors will invest into him or her. Once again, money is the most neutral substance in the world. When whites and Asians take over all the high-paying professional athletic jobs, and blacks take over all the high-paying tech companies, I'll agree with you. As of right now, I am just curious as to why you are being so spiteful. That is more interesting to me. I actually want to understand you instead of labeling you a racist and looking down on you. Absolutely. One of this best quotes, this. I've taken a lot of classes about the struggles and challenges of people of color. African Americans who are 4th or 5th plus generation are descended from slaves. The slaves who had weak genes and didn't do well with manual labor were killed or left to die, while the ones who were strong were bred by slave owners so that their children could do the same work. That's why many African Americans today are perceived as more athletic, when really it has to do with the fact that they were lucky to have ancestors who were allowed to live, rather than blacks are more athletic. Why don't the African countries do well in basketball when they compete in the Olympics? And the thing about Asians being smarter than most people is also a myth. The reason why Asians are perceived as smarter is because back in the early days when the US allowed Asians to immigrate here, only educated, white-collar Asians were allowed to come into the country. Of course, the educated Asians who came into the US pass on those same educational ideals to their children, and that gives birth to the stereotype that Asians are smarter. Educated Asians also usually come from affluent families back in their country who can pay for the costs of immigrating here. Go to any stereotypically smart Asian country and you'll see just as many poor and uneducated people there as you would here, maybe even more so. So race is more or less a difference only in skin pigmentation. Other genetic traits found such as athleticism, intelligence, etc. are pretty much normally distributed between different ethnicities. The only thing that matters, beyond everyone's opinion, is what Bat said only one sentence. Something to the effect of if you have a product or service or website that makes money, or has the ability to make money, you will get funding. That sums up everything. I don't care if you are black, white, Asian, purple, or pink, nor do most investors. If someone has an insane amount of value to bring to the table, they will get their funding. If not from the first VC, from the next 1,000 waiting in line. Edit, just saw what Monty wrote. Spot on. As already stated, people gravitate towards activities they are good at, and they excel. You're not racist, BTT. You're just seeing more of the stuff on the surface when it comes to race, rather than the deeper issues under the surface. Well, that seems completely logical, and I thank you for sharing that. So basically, to summarize, the blacks in America really are more athletic, and the Asians in America really are smarter. Not because they just are, but the only people in this country who made it that shared their ancestry needed those traits. On the contrary, the stereotypical views that were being discussed in this thread are still a part of the big picture here. Maybe they aren't extremely significant, but they still do need to be considered. You got it mostly right. Just be careful not to think that blacks in America really are more athletic and Asians in America really are smarter. It makes those traits seem normal to those races or ethnicities and creates the perception that the blacks who aren't athletic and the Asians who don't do well in school seem like they are the ones who are out of place and not normal, when it's actually the other way around. Oh, the irony, the whiz-kid Asian came in with some knowledge and settled the dust in the air. Who also understood that I am not racist because he is actually able to comprehend a point of view other than his own without becoming angry. Oh, the irony. I'm Pacific Islander. Lol. This subject is worse than politics, SMX4, good job to anyone that succeeds. The end. I actually laughed out loud at this. Dark side, I think that worrying about this is pretty pointless. Anyone who's done direct sales, myself included, will tell you that of course your physical appearance will play a factor when you are pitching. Your voice, hair, body type, gender, race, clothes, height, etc. will all have an effect on how the prospect sees you. However, the biggest thing to remember is no matter how you look, if you have a good enough offer, people will take it. Become ignorant to the list of reasons why people won't take you seriously and only focus on the reasons people should take you seriously. There is a glass ceiling for different minorities and different fields and arenas of business. As a business student or entrepreneur in the Silicon Valley, I can vouch that race or ethnicity does play a role in business. For example, South Asians, Indians, Pakistanis, etc. face a glass ceiling when competing for promotions against Caucasians who have the same amount of experience and education in high-tech companies here in Silicon Valley. I'm sure these black entrepreneurs who are trying to make it in the tech world in Silicon Valley are also facing their own glass ceiling. Point is, glass ceilings are definitely there for people of color. They are also there for women, the disabled, homosexuals, fat people, short people, the elderly, the young, the poor, etc. It's not fair. But glass ceilings, just like any obstacle, can be overcome if there are people who are willing to put in the extra effort to succeed. I hope these black entrepreneurs do make it and pave the way for others. Very arbitrary. I hope that everyone succeeds no matter their ethnicity, that we may be able to conquer these glass ceilings as succeeds in mindset by putting in the extra effort. Also to continually bring these type of topic issues to the light in order to keep them in front of us and not under the rug. I know these glass ceilings myself that he speaks about, being Hispanic and the only Hispanic in my community in the real estate investing business. It has been hard to be accepted and taken seriously. I'm going to apologize ahead of time for this being such a long post, but after waking up and seeing all the responses, I felt that I had to clear up some of the misconceptions of a lot of the more ignorant responders about this topic. It's not just direct sales but practically every aspect of life where blacks and Hispanics are seeking something from whites. For instance, studies have shown that black people with black-sounding names on job applications get called into interview 50% less than people with white-sounding names even though they have identical qualifications. Same goes for apartment hunting as well. Blacks are called back less often because apartment owners believe that they'll bring crime or won't pay their rent. It's a stigma that blacks and Hispanics have to deal with since we live in a majority white nation. So, when we know that these biases exist in nearly all aspects of interaction between blacks, Hispanics, and white Americans, why would we assume that they don't exist in Silicon Valley? White guys like BTT who are misinformed, are running venture capital firms. For instance, they aren't aware that black African immigrants and their children actually perform better than all other groups in America when it comes to education, including whites and Asians. An example of an African immigrant family. The mother immigrated from Kenya and attended Harvard and teaches her children to play the piano, etc. Video equals YouTube, 5KFDW6LQZTQ? VE equals 5KFDW6LQZTQ or video. A video on African immigrants' achievements in the US. Video equals YouTube, HFZXZWF_co8. VE equals HFZXZWF_co8 or video. The reason why black African immigrants perform better than native black Americans as well as whites and Asians is partly to do with the fact that they come from poor countries, so they are more motivated to try hard and accomplish their dream. The fact that many of them come from middle and upper class African families has a role to play as well, which has to do with the point that Success in Mind was making about a tradition of emphasis on education being responsible for the success of Asian Americans since the immigrants from Asian countries came from the middle and upper classes of their countries. However, African immigrants are also not encumbered with the limiting beliefs that native African Americans have due to centuries of being oppressed and told that they aren't intelligent or possess other positive qualities like beauty, goodness, etc. These beliefs keep African Americans from feeling like there's no point in trying because the odds are against them. Video equals YouTube, WG7U1QSUD1G. VE equals W.G. 7U1QSUD1G and AMP. Feature equals related or video equals YouTube. MXFKNFNs. VE equals MXFKNFNs and AMP. Feature equals related or video. On a side note, I've read a few articles about women apparently getting handed money in Silicon Valley because there's so few and they really want female entrepreneurs. Well, dark side, I can't disagree with you. If I shared half of the nonsense I've heard over the phone from business associates who couldn't tell what my race was because I sounded too smart, this thread would likely get closed. However, at the end of the day you still have to win. There are tons of guys like BTT out there, but there's also a lot of guys that aren't, and those are the guys you have to form relationships with. Let them know that everything you touch turns to gold and have examples to show it. This thread should be locked. Nothing constructive here, just a lot of opinions that amount to zilch. On the contrary, I think this thread is fine. It opens up a discussion space where we can talk about race from a business or entrepreneurship standpoint, and it starts from seeing where people stand in regards to that. Already, we're seeing some who do not think race has anything to do with business and others who believe race is a significant factor worth discussing. There are a minimum number of black students colleges must have. Any black immigrant who does their work and follows the brick road is passed up through the system in our quest for equality, which actually does an effective job of making society unequal. The fact that blacks are around 15% of the population while making up almost 50% of the prison population, may help you understand why people may be a little apprehensive to rent you their apartment. It also could explain why those black children would feel safer with the white doll than the black doll. Even at a young age, they are able to distinguish between what is most likely to be good and what is most likely to be bad, and they have nothing to gain nor lose from being honest. It is a survival instinct for children to pick up on such things. On another note, I do not think black children should think the white doll is prettier. Especially since beauty is an entirely subjective thing. This internal problem needs to be fixed on the inside rather than the outside. The same goes for the reason behind this thread. It is an internal problem and not an external problem. Happy day, Bat. Beware of people like BTT who are anti-communist and against the senseless distribution of cultural Marxism, which only exists for the sake of bringing equality to an unequal world as if it is some higher spiritual calling, allowing people with oppressed predatory instincts to feel good acting with delusions of righteousness. Nobody benefits more from these systems than those on the lower ends of the pole. Therefore they will always be the ones pushing such ideologies forward. In nature, the inferior creature will always be more populous in number because that is what is required to ensure the survival of its species. For this reason, as well as many others, I am entirely against our current form of matured democracy, which is nothing more than a bureaucratic nightmare. In the end, when the people and train of thought that created a civilization becomes diluted and new values come forth that exist only in the mind of man, the nation will start to decline and eventually fall. Happens time and time again. Rome was pretty liberal and multicultural when it fell as well. America is evolving and losing everything that once made it great. In only a few decades this country will be so far away from the excellence that once made it the best it will hardly even be America anymore. For the record, I don't feel black people are the reason for this slow degradation, especially since black people were a part of the original organism that established this country. I feel they are entitled to this land. The real problem will go unsaid, because to even hint it is far worse than anything you could possibly say about blacks due to our social conditioning that is inescapable to the unaware eye. Thanks lol. First of all, the word you're looking for is apprehensive, not comprehensive. For a guy who is so quick to portray an entire race of people as less intelligent, you sure do make a lot of mistakes in your writing that an average 8th grader would be embarrassed to make. Regarding your point about blacks making up 50% of the prison population, did it not occur to you that poverty and a biased cultural and judicial system have a role to play in that? Drug-related charges are the single greatest cause of black inmates being in prison. Even though blacks and whites have been shown to use drugs at similar rates, blacks are arrested and convicted for drug possession at much higher rates. Police officers aren't busting down the doors of middle-class white people and arresting them for drug possession. Instead, they mainly focus on poorer, inner-city areas where the population is mostly black and Latino. Blacks and Latinos have also been shown to get much longer sentences for committing the same crimes as whites, because the mostly white judges in this country are harsher against black and Latino offenders than they are against white offenders. Educate yourself on the issues instead of basing your opinions off of Rush Limbaugh or shows like Cops. I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but the word you're looking for is internal, not eternal, SMXF. You've done a pretty good job of hinting at it already. Any fool can see that you're referring to the growing population of Hispanics in this country. I live in California, the state with the largest Hispanic population in the Union. Most of my friends are Hispanics. They're very nice, hard-working people. I hate it when people like you and other racialist whites try to make it seem as if they're a horde of locusts taking over this country and ruining it. Get out of your comfort zone and actually spend time around Hispanics. You might be surprised how many of them you become friends with. I am too busy focusing on what I'm trying to say. Grammar is not of very high importance to me. Grammar is nothing more than an established set of rules. It is the thought, not the pointless punctuation that matters. If you knew what I was trying to say, I've done my job. Poor you guys. I don't even know who Rush Limbaugh is. I meant to say internal. I guess since you can point out grammar errors, you are smarter. When I look at your replies, I would consider myself a failure if I resorted to pointing out dots and slashes that were in the wrong places. Lol, not Hispanics. Look up the people who brought the slaves to America in the first place. If whites and blacks use drugs at similar rates, why are blacks overwhelming prisons even though they are just 15% of the population, while whites who are 60% sit at a minority in the prisons? Since white people are the majority here, if we were to use drugs at similar rates, we should be shoulder to shoulder in prison. But according to you, whites get off easy and blacks are hit with harder sentences because we are all conspiring to work against your people. That is just bullcrap. The real reason is blacks most likely have prior convictions. The poverty argument for drug use is invalid. Living in poverty is a decision, and even then, it is not my fault your people choose to treat each other like garbage. Should have listened to Tupac. Did you read that article that I posted? Ugh. You're even more misguided than I thought. You mean Jews, right? You're a young guy, so that's why I'm holding back. You've got a lot of messed up ideas, man. I just hope that you wise up before your 30s so that you don't pass on this nonsense to any kids. Black people don't know how to hide their malicious activities. That is all I got from the article. It does require a certain level of overall intelligence to be sneaky. I am tired of speaking politically correct in this thread. Unleash. Let me hear what you have to say. My feelings won't be hurt. I am interested in what you have to say. I have messed up ideas. Why? I am misguided. Why? Explain yourself before making such comments and running to the hills. I'll unload a little on you. I would expect a black man to support the people who originally enslaved his own people in the first place. The Zionist Jew will fight for black equality, because the black population, who is undeniably less intelligent as a collective whole, is easier to control. Again, I wouldn't expect you to totally understand this, cause hey, you're black. Don't listen to people like me, I am wrong, and the communist-like Zionist society in the making is right. You show harsh feelings toward what I had to say because it goes against equality. Well, equality goes against nature. The universe is not equal. This is iron law. This nation was created with the idea that all men should have equal opportunities to succeed. Oh, how equal opportunity has been completely blown out of proportion because of people like you crying that there are no black entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley since everyone is racist and that isn't equal. First of all, my ancestors weren't enslaved. I'm an African immigrant, so I'm not descended from the African Americans who were enslaved. However, regarding your point about Jews enslaving blacks, many thousands of peoples took part in the slave trade, including some blacks who sold their people into slavery to European and American traders. Slavery was the most lucrative trade during that time period, so why would anyone expect Jews or any other type of white people not to take part in it? And, as far as Jews controlling the world, almost all of the wealthiest men in American history have been non-Jewish whites. A Christian, German American, also the wealthiest man in history. In today's dollars, his net worth would be over $663 billion. That makes Bill Gates' fortune look like nothing. A Christian, Scottish immigrant to the United States. The second wealthiest man in history. He also lived in the robber baron era when monopolies were legal. In today's dollars, his net worth would be worth almost $300 billion. Anglo-German American. Current wealthiest man in America. He would be the wealthiest man alive if he hadn't given away so much of his fortune to charity. Below is an image of the Forbes top 10 wealthiest Americans list. Out of the 10, only George Soros and Sheldon Adelson are Jewish, the rest are non-Jewish whites. I don't believe I ever said they did. Everything I said was aimed at Zionist, communist-like agendas, which is the main cause of degradation and the slow decline of Western society. This country was not founded on such ideologies, therefore, it cannot be sustained on such ideologies. Dude. Israel has nothing to do with the problems facing the US or any other Western country right now. I don't care about Israel, I only care about the United States, but I don't see Israel as some great force of evil like you do. Zionism isn't exclusive to Israel. But I do find it interesting that neither Iraq, Afghanistan, Persia, nor Pakistan recognize Israel as a state. Zionism Zanzm. Click for IPA Pronunciation Guide N1. A political movement for the establishment and support of a national homeland for Jews in Palestine, now concerned chiefly with the development of the modern state of Israel too. A policy or movement for Jews to return to Palestine from the diaspora. Zionist. Cultural Zionism Hebrew, Tzionat Truchanet, is a strain of the concept of Zionism that values Jewish culture and history, including language and historical roots, rather than other Zionist ideas such as political Zionism. The man considered to have founded the concept of cultural Zionism is Asher Ginsburg, better known as Ahad Haim. I'll make this my last point of the night before I go to bed, since I have a feeling that MJ will shut this thread down when he sees it in the morning. What's wrong with valuing Jewish culture and history? Every ethnic and religious group values their history, but Jews are not allowed to. You're 22, so I'm not going to view you as a hopeless case. Since you're so young, you have many years to learn and change your opinions about certain issues. My advice would be to educate yourself about the issues instead of just listening to the local white supremacist down at the bar or wherever you got this nonsense from. Just don't pass it on to any kids that you might have. Let them make up their own minds about these issues instead of poisoning them with hate. You don't have a clue, do you? There is a reason Henry Ford, Thomas Jefferson, and many other countries had problems with them. They are a race of people with their own culture, identity and beliefs. I want you to try and marry a Jewish girl, post a video of how her parents react to that. That would be true comedy. I suppose Henry Ford was misguided in his beliefs too. I bet he was a white supremacist. I do not hang out with white supremacists. I barely drink, nor do I smoke. You would love to think I was some form of white trash though. Again, they almost entirely enslaved your people and you defend them. I suggest you educate yourself about real issues. Jews are known nation wreckers. Starting to get some complaints on this thread, so I'm locking it for now. Bob.